All right, today we're jumping into a book from 1928 that, let me tell you, feels like it could have been written yesterday. It's called Propaganda by Edward Bernays, a guy who's basically known as the father of public relations. What he detailed all those years ago is pretty much the instruction manual for how our modern world works, for how public opinion gets shaped. So let's get right into it. Just let that sink in for a second. This was written nearly 100 years ago. Bernays came right out and said that for a democracy to even function, a small, select group of people has to guide the rest of us, not with force, but by shaping the very things we think and believe. It's an incredibly bold and, honestly, a pretty chilling statement to make.
And that leads to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? If we're being guided, if our minds are being molded, then who exactly are the molders? Who are these people pulling the strings that we've supposedly never even heard of?
Well, Bernays had a name for this group. He called them the invisible government. And he wasn't being metaphorical. He argued that these are the true ruling powers in our society. But, and this is the key part, it's probably not who you're picturing in your head. See, this isn't some secret club of villains meeting in a volcano lair. Bernays argued that the invisible governors are simply the leaders of every major sphere of society. We're talking politicians and CEOs, sure, but also newspaper editors, university presidents, union leaders, even the top fashion designers. The wild part is that most of them don't even know they're part of this government. They're just influential people whose opinions naturally sway the masses that follow them. So here's the kicker. Their job, whether they realize it or not, is to make our complicated world simple for the rest of us. They sift through all the chaos and noise and narrow down our choices. They are, in his words, the ones who pull the wires which control the public mind. And without them, modern society would just grind to a halt. But what's the tool they use to pull those wires? That tool is propaganda. Now, I know what you're thinking, but hold on. For Bernays, propaganda wasn't a dirty word. Not at all. He saw it as the essential, practical arm of this invisible government. It's simply the mechanism they use to get things done on a massive scale. His definition was really simple and technical. It wasn't about lies or deception. It's just an organized effort. Think of it like a hammer. You can use a hammer to build a house, or you can use it to break a window. The tool itself is totally neutral. It all depends on who's using it and why. And this really shows the disconnect. When we hear the word propaganda, our minds jump straight to wartime lies and sinister manipulation. But Bernays argued it's a perfectly normal, even necessary activity. He basically said if you think you have a good idea, it's not just your right, it's your duty to use propaganda to spread it. So, why is this tool so incredibly effective? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Bernays was tapping into the brand new science of mass psychology to explain how you can regiment and control the masses without them ever knowing what's happening. Here's the core principle he used. When we're in a crowd, we don't act like logical individuals anymore. The group mind, as he called it, doesn't really think. It doesn't use reason. Instead, it runs on pure impulse, habits, and emotion. And its very first impulse is almost always to follow the lead of a trusted figure. And this leads to one of his most famous and kind of brutal metaphors. He argued that teaching everyone to read didn't create a society of independent thinkers. Nope. All it did was create millions of minds that were like rubber stamps, ready to be pressed onto an ink pad of slogans and headlines. When millions of people are exposed to the exact same media, they all get the exact same imprint. Okay, so that's the theory, but how does it work in practice? Well, if you understand how the group mind works, you don't have to just sit back and watch public opinion. You can actively build it. You can engineer it. You can create demand for something completely out of thin air. Let's take a real-life example he used, velvet. The velvet industry was failing. So how do you fix it? You don't just run ads saying, please buy velvet. No, you go to the leaders. First, you get the big-name Paris fashion designers to start using velvet in their collections. Then you arrange for high society influencers to be seen wearing these new designs. The fashion media sees this, calls it a new trend, and suddenly the public sees velvet everywhere and decides, all on their own, they think, that they want it. Demand was just created. And this is the fundamental difference he was talking about. Old-school salesmanship tries to beat down your resistance. It's like someone yelling, please buy a piano. But the new propaganda method is about making that resistance completely vanish. You don't sell the piano. You create an entire culture around the idea that every sophisticated home needs a music room. Then the customer comes to you and begs, please sell me a piano. It's a total game changer. So let's step back. We have this system of invisible leaders using propaganda to engineer what we think. It sounds pretty bad, right? But for Bernays, this wasn't an evil plot. He saw it as a social necessity. It was the only way to create order out of the chaos of modern life.
His justification was actually pretty straightforward. Think about it. If every single one of us had to deeply research every political, economic, and social issue, our society would just freeze. We'd be completely overwhelmed. So he argued, we subconsciously agree to let this invisible government filter the world for us, point out the important things, and boil our choices down to just a few manageable options. And that's really the bottom line for him. Bernays truly believed that propaganda was the essential tool for the intelligent minority to guide the rest of society towards productive goals and to create a smooth, functioning world. To him, it wasn't a weapon of deception. It was an instrument of progress.
Now, fast forward to today. The tools have definitely changed. We have social media influencers instead of just society leaders, and hyper-targeted digital ads instead of just newspaper editorials. But the core principles Bernays laid out, you could argue they're more powerful now than he ever could have imagined. And that leaves all of us with a final, pretty unsettling question to chew on. How much of what you think, what you want, and what you believe is really, truly your own idea?